Ahoy there, jabronis. Welcome to Create and Destroy. I'm your host, Dan Donnarumma, and this is episode 29. Pretty freaking pumped about that, to be quite honest with you guys. For today's episode, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm not going to have a guest today, so no guest for today. Instead, I'm going to share some thoughts and some musings because Create and Destroy recently turned 1, which I'm really freaking excited about. So first and foremost, thank you to everyone that has followed the show, that listens to episodes, that reaches out to me. Thank you to all the guests that have come on to the show. It means a lot to me. Prior to starting this podcast, I was very excited about starting a show. And there was those seeds of doubt in my mind that no one's going to listen to this shit. No one's going to care. People aren't going to want to listen to whatever it is that you have to talk about in regards to music. It's really awesome to know that when an episode drops on Tuesday mornings, without a doubt, there will be a number of people that will listen to the show before I even get to work. And that to me is just fucking awesome. Thank you to all of you that have listened to the show over this last year, that have made this such an awesome experience for me. For all of you that follow the show on Instagram and interact with me on Instagram and send me messages. It means a lot. It's really fucking cool. And it gives me at least some inkling that maybe I'm doing things even remotely right. So thanks, guys. So let's kind of rewind a little bit and go back to where I was at and where my mind was at a year ago. As I mentioned, when I started doing this podcast, did not think that people were gonna really be into it. It was just, I'm gonna do this and hopefully people will find it interesting. If not, whatever. And initially, my thought was that I love art and I want to make a podcast where I interview artists and I interview people that just make stuff, whether it's music, photography, write books, make videos on YouTube, whatever it was. My thought was that I'm going to just interview people that make things that I find to be cool. The other thing was that I initially set out to release an episode a week. And after just a couple of months of doing that, I was so fucking burnt out by that. It was a lot of work. There is a lot of work that goes into creating a podcast. There's a lot that goes into it. At least for me, there's a lot of homework that I do and a lot of work that I put into making an episode. And to do it week over week while also working a full-time job and also trying to have a life, it just wound up becoming too much. And eventually I was starting to feel like, holy shit, my head is about to explode. So that was one thing. And early on was fortunate enough to schedule interviews with some really great musicians whose music I really enjoy. And so the first 4 out of 5 of my interviews were with musicians. And man, I can't even begin to tell you guys how excited I was to schedule those interviews, to conduct them, and then to be able to share them with others. After that, I wound up interviewing people that artists, some people that are content creators. And for me, although those interviews were fun in their own way, I love music and I found myself completely energized about the idea of nerding out and asking questions and finding out about the music that I really enjoy and the albums that I'm really spending a lot of time listening to. And so after getting worn down a little bit from releasing an episode a week and then really feeling more of an excitement in doing interviews with musicians, I took a break to kind of get the wind back in my sails and get things going again. And I'm so glad that I did, because that was when I feel like Create and Destroy really started to hit a groove. I was fortunate enough to get some really cool artists on. For me, that's when I feel like I could start to tell, at least when I listen to my episodes, my older ones, a difference in my abilities to interview people. You know, when I first started this, I figured there would be some learning curves, but I did not realize how goddamn tough it is to conduct an interview, sound like you know what the hell you're talking about, make the interview sound interesting, and then also hopefully make the person that you're interviewing feel comfortable enough to be able to answer your questions in an honest and an interesting manner. Doing this makes me have such an appreciation for people like Marc Maron, Anthony Bourdain, Phoebe Judge, even Joe Rogan. I'm not the biggest Joe Rogan fan, but I will say the dude is fucking talented at what he does. So yeah, around last August or so, that's when the show took that turn. And that's when I start to see, at least when I go back and listen to those older episodes, a little bit of a difference and an improvement in my question making and my interviewing skills. Some of those early episodes, guys, I can't even listen to them. I'm just like, oh my God, I sound like such a fucking idiot. So for those of you that have stuck around since the beginning, thank you very much, because those early episodes were a little rough at times. When I think back to last summer and when I decided that, all right, we're going to scale back the episodes, I'm going to do 2 episodes every month, and I'm just going to interview musicians. Prior to that point, I sometimes doubted myself. I sometimes doubted whether I would even make it to a year, if it would be something that, 1, I would want to continue doing, and 2, that there would even be an interest in the show for me to even want to continue doing it. But here we are. I made it, and you guys are still here. You guys are still listening. So thank you guys so much. For me, I've always looked at the first year is going to be a learning curve. That's always what I've thought for me, that year 1 will be a learning curve. And then beyond that, it's just honing and improving what it is that I'm able to do. And yeah, there were definitely learning experiences and learning moments over the last year. But yeah, this year has absolutely been a learning experience for me, for sure. Not just in terms of how to prepare and how to moderate a discussion, but also technical things that I didn't really know how to do beforehand. How to record audio so it sounds good, how to edit audio, how to manage and organize my time in a way that I really hadn't had to do previously, because now I'm responsible for scheduling interviews with people and making sure that I'm fucking prepared and I'm not wasting their time. You know, it's funny. This is episode number 29, and this has been a year of doing this. And the one thing that has not changed for me at all is I still get nervous every single time I do an interview, every single goddamn time. I'm always nervous a little bit beforehand, and then the nerves usually settle within like a minute, maybe even less. They usually dissipate after a little bit, but yeah, I'm always nervous beforehand. I remember when I recorded the first episode, which was me just kind of talking about what I hope to do with the podcast. I think it was maybe 10 minutes long, and holy shit, I was so nervous to do that. And I was also super freaking anxious about releasing it. I was so worried about how people would receive it, if people were going to enjoy it, if people were going to listen after the fact. And you guys did, which is awesome. Danielle had to really help ease my nerves and my anxiety when it came to releasing that first episode, because yeah, I was anxious as hell. But even after that though, there were still times where I struggled with feeling anxious about releasing certain episodes, depending upon the conversation that I had with the individual that was on that episode, or maybe with some of the stuff that I talked about in regards to the band or the artist and their music. You know, one of the things that I didn't initially intend to do with the podcast, but just kind of wound up happening because of some of the musicians that came onto the show and their music, was I started to talk about my struggles with mental health and depression and anxiety. And initially it was really tough to delve into that sort of stuff. Prior to doing this podcast, I would never really talk to anyone about my struggles with anxiety and depression other than Danielle, maybe like my brother. Most people though, I really hid that side of me away from them, and the show has made me feel more comfortable with being able to talk about that sort of stuff, which is awesome. I've had people reach out to me and thank me for talking about that sort of stuff, which is so fucking cool, because that wasn't my intention when I talked about those issues. But to me, it was just an added bonus that, you know, I'm being able to kind of share these thoughts and these feelings that I have with a certain band or a certain artist, and being able to have someone say that, yeah, I appreciate that you were able to talk about that stuff, because that's shit that I deal with, is really cool. You know, I definitely had to get over the hump of you're making something and putting it out there into the world. I know this is in no way comparable to a musician or a band or an artist putting their art out into the world, but doing this podcast has made me feel more comfortable about the idea of, shit, man, I do write poetry. Maybe I do want to start putting that stuff out into the world. Or, hey, I want to release music. Maybe I do feel more comfortable about wanting to share that with others, which I think is really cool, because those were things that I did not think were going to happen from doing this podcast, but have definitely started to happen. The podcast has definitely allowed me to feel more comfortable and more confident in my own voice and who I am as a person, which is fucking cool. Again, those were things that I definitely did not anticipate or didn't think would happen as a byproduct from doing the podcast, but have definitely come to fruition, which is awesome. I also had to get used to the fact that I hate the sound of my voice and I sound like an idiot, and I'll probably always feel that way about my voice. And so I would record an episode and I would record the intro and the outro and I would listen to them, and I'd be sitting there just being like, ugh, I sound like such an idiot. I sound like a fucking man-child. But now I just accept it. Now I accept that not only do I look like a man-child, but I also sound like one too, and that's all right. Another thing that is really awesome about doing this podcast is that I listen to so much music, and I spend a lot of time both at home and at work listening to music. I listen to hours and hours of music every single day, and I spend a lot of time listening to certain artists and certain bands and certain albums, and those bands and those albums mean a lot to me. And it's crazy to me that I've had certain people come onto the show, or I've had other artists or other musicians listen to the podcast because of that one artist, and now they follow the show. And there's been so many times where I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, I did not anticipate that sort of stuff to happen. I mean, it's kind of surreal almost, you know? I mean, these people are just like you or I. They're just fucking people that happen to make music that we like. They're no different than us, but it still is kind of weird to see certain artists and certain musicians checking out my Instagram stories. It's kind of fucking weird, man. You know, again, I started doing this and my thought was, shit, man, I'll get some people that I know in Rochester that are cool artists that are making cool stuff. I'll get them on the show and I'll be able to pick their brains, and, you know, maybe some people in Rochester will start to listen to this, and, you know, maybe something will happen from it. But yeah, you know, I remember when I scheduled people like Tom Wasluck and Dan Barrett and Kristen Hayter, like, dude, those people made time to come onto the show. What? That's kind of fucking crazy. So I think that's been one of the really cool things about this, is that music has been such a big part of my life for so many years, ever since I was a little kid. And I've always felt the desire and the need to give back to the community and this art form and this scene that has given me so much over the years. And one of the things that I at least try to do, and I hope that I do, is to give back to these musicians that make music that I love. If I can provide them with an opportunity and an outlet to talk about their art and talk about everything that went into them making their music, and provide them with that opportunity to share that story and that information with others, that's fucking awesome, man. That to me is so goddamn cool. And over the years, as my musical tastes have gotten more and more, I'll say, refined, I have come to find fewer and fewer people that I know that listen to the same kinds of music that I do. And so more often than not, when I have discussions with folks about bands or about music, it's on the goddamn internet. And it's so cool to know that, hey, there are other freaks just like you that like the same crazy ass music. And I love having conversations about music, any of my interests. I love having conversations about baseball and the Yankees. I love having conversations about Star Wars and Game of Thrones. I love having conversations about music and albums that I'm into. And more often than not, people that I know or I come in contact with don't listen to the music that I listen to. And so it's really great that I get to nerd out and allow you guys to placate me with my bullshit and talk about an album or an artist and talk about how that album makes me feel. It's great that I get to have those conversations with you guys as well. I always enjoy having conversations with fans of the show that are into a certain band or a certain album. Thought would happen. Another added bonus of doing the podcast is, again, as I mentioned, this show has made me feel more comfortable and more confident with who I am as a person. I'm a fucking nerd, and I like talking about things that I like. And on top of that, because of this podcast and how things have gone, I've got some other things that I'm really fucking excited about that I'm working on right now that I don't want to say just yet because still in the early stages, but I got some things that I'm working on that I'm, again, really excited about. And if it wasn't for this podcast, would have never happened. So yeah, I'm really happy that I decided to challenge myself and to do something that initially scared the shit out of me, but that I had been wanting to do for years. I'm so glad that I took that leap because I feel that there has been so many positive things that have come about from doing this podcast. So many things that I'm so grateful for. This podcast is really fun. I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't. So what's next? I'm going to keep doing this thing, guys. I don't have any plans to stop. Again, I get to have conversations with people that I otherwise never would, and I get to talk to them about albums that I really fucking enjoy, and that's awesome. And so I have no desire to stop doing this anytime soon. So as long as you guys keep listening, as long as there are bands that are willing to come on the show whose music I like, I'm going to keep doing this. Again, guys, I can't even begin to thank you enough for all of your continued support over this time. My hope is that I'll just keep doing this podcast and hopefully I'll keep getting better and just keep putting out more and more interesting conversations for you guys to enjoy. The more I do the show, the more I start to figure things out. You know, I was thinking about maybe doing like a mid-year album review, but then I decided, let's do an episode where I talk about kind of some of the shit that's been going on in my head over the last year. So maybe in the future, maybe if I'm still doing this next year, maybe instead of doing this, I'll do like a mid-year top favorite albums. Yeah, maybe I'll make a post about that. Maybe I'll release something about some of my favorite albums so far up to this point. So yeah, keep a lookout for that because maybe that's what I'll do. I'll still talk about some shit that I've been rocking this year. If you guys follow the podcast on Instagram, you know I regularly share with you guys what it is that I'm listening to. So shit, let's start wrapping this up. God damn, that's another thing that's weird. It took me some time to get used to talking to no one. So I live in an apartment, and my apartment is very wide open. It's fucking loud as hell at times with my neighbors stomping around. So I'm currently sitting in my closet because this is the quietest place in my apartment for me to record. So yeah, sometimes it's very weird to sit in my closet and just talk into a microphone. But shit, man, I really enjoy it. All right, so let's wrap this up, guys. Again, thank you so much for all of your support. You guys are fucking awesome. Thank you so much to every single person that has come onto this podcast in the last year. Thank you so much to all the musicians who make incredible music for all of us to enjoy. You guys make life so much fucking better. You guys should support every single artist and musician and band that has come onto the show. You people are all amazing. I love every single one of you. And last but not least, gotta extend a big ups to my number one homegirl, Danielle, because not only does she support the show, but from time to time she also helps out with certain things, and that's always appreciated. So thanks so much, Danielle. You're the shit. If you're not, for whatever crazy reason, you have not subscribed to the show, subscribe. What the hell you doing, man? Subscribe. Follow the show on Instagram. I try to post on Twitter every so often, but Twitter is such an afterthought. Follow the show on Instagram because that'll be the best way to stay in touch with me and to keep up with episodes and other bits of info on the podcast. And then, as always, you beautiful sons of bitches, get out there, create something cool. I will see you all next time.